In this video, we're exploring 6 shocking cases where Karens get mauled by dangerous animals. From a parent who demanded better access at a tiger enclosure, to a golfer who refused to lose another ball, even striking a 9-foot alligator. Let's begin with one tourist's quest for the perfect safari selfie, which turned into a nightmare she'd never escape. It was September 14, 2016. Dry wind pushed dust across the rutted roads of a wildlife reserve, where the late morning sun burned through a cloudless sky, flattening the grass into dull gold as heat shimmered above the ground, and stillness settled between scattered acacia trees. One of the tourists that day was Amber Goldfield, 59, a woman who rarely left things to chance. For nearly 20 years, she worked as a housekeeping supervisor, building a reputation for precision, routine, and control. She documented everything: staff routines, family moments, even small, ordinary days, because to her, nothing was too minor to capture. The safari came from a company raffle, her first trip outside the country, and she prepared for it the same way she handled work, carefully, methodically, studying animals and filming techniques before she ever arrived. But once inside the self-drive lion enclosure, that careful mindset didn't last. Amber started complaining almost immediately. The glass was too dirty, the angle was terrible, and the whole setup was not worth the trip. She spoke louder than necessary, repeating the same frustrations as if saying them enough would fix the problem. Other vehicles passed quietly, but Amber kept going, irritated, impatient, and convinced she deserved a better view. She didn't want the usual distant footage most tourists accepted. She wanted something closer, something that felt real, something she could show off. The SUV gave her confidence. To her, it wasn't just a vehicle, it was protection, a barrier she believed made her untouchable, no matter how close she got. The enclosure covered several hundred acres and held a group of 12 lions. The lionesses weighed around 280 pounds and killed prey by clamping down on the throat, compressing the airway and major blood vessels until breathing and circulation stopped. Even in a controlled setting, their instincts didn't change. Anything moving outside a vehicle could be assessed as prey. At the entrance, staff made the rules clear. Windows must stay fully closed. Signs along the road repeated the warning. That morning, one lioness rested in thin grass about 40 feet from the road, watching vehicles move through her space. At first, Amber followed the rules, filming through the closed window while narrating, but the glare and dust on the glass kept ruining her shots. She pointed it out again and again, her tone shifting from annoyed to openly frustrated. She blamed the car, the park, even the cheap setup, saying she didn't come all this way for bad footage. After about 10 minutes, she had had enough. Still complaining, she rolled the window down and extended her arm outside, pushing her phone outward and adjusting the angle repeatedly. The movement drew attention immediately. With part of her body now outside, she was no longer protected. The lioness noticed and stood up, locking onto the motion. It began walking toward the vehicle, slow, direct, and focused. Amber kept filming, only briefly glancing at the animal, not recognizing the change in behavior. When the lioness got close, about 15 feet, it suddenly accelerated. The attack was immediate. The lioness lunged upward, placing its front paws against the door for leverage, and drove its jaws into the side of Amber's neck. The bite compressed her throat and pulled her violently against the window frame. With her upper body already outside, the lioness used its weight and grip to drag her fully out of the vehicle. Once on the ground, it repositioned slightly and maintained a firm hold on her throat, applying sustained pressure. This is how lions kill, by cutting off airflow and restricting blood to the brain. Amber's movements weakened within seconds. As oxygen supply dropped, the lioness held its position, focused and controlled. The entire sequence lasted under 2 minutes. Amber's phone remained inside the vehicle, still recording audio. Another car approached but kept its distance and contacted park staff. No one exited their vehicle. Rangers arrived approximately 18 minutes later and used vehicles and noise to push the lioness away. It disengaged and moved off without further aggression. Amber was pronounced dead at the scene. The cause of death was consistent with a fatal throat bite, resulting in rapid oxygen deprivation and vascular compression, along with severe trauma to the neck and upper body. The investigation concluded that the attack occurred after Amber exposed part of her body outside the vehicle. The lioness responded in a typical predatory manner to movement within reach. Following the incident, the reserve implemented stricter enforcement, increased patrol presence, and reinforced visitor compliance with safety protocols. Footage from the incident was held by authorities due to high graphic content. She thought lowering the glass gave her control, until it didn't, and days later, on an open mountain trail, another woman stepped closer for a better shot, unaware a grizzly had already locked onto her from behind the brush. It was August 23, 2018. Late afternoon light stretched across the national park, warming dry grass and exposed rock. Wind moved steadily along the ridge, carrying scent through open terrain where visibility was clear, but distance and elevation masked how quickly something could close the gap. Denise hadn't come out there just to hike. The trip came right after her divorce, and she had been telling people she was finally doing things on her own now. The trail wasn't random. She picked it because it was popular, photogenic, and something she could post about. She wanted proof that she could handle it, that she didn't need help, and that she wasn't going to sit around playing it safe. The photos mattered more than the hike itself. She had already been stopping often, redoing shots, checking angles, and making sure everything looked right. When she saw the cub, it wasn't just an animal. It was the kind of moment she had been hoping for. Something close, something different, something that would stand out compared to everyone else's distant wildlife pictures. The trail cut through active grizzly territory, and it was late summer, peak feeding season. Berry patches covered sections of the slope, and bears were moving through the area for hours at a time, building fat reserves. A female with a cub operated differently. Her focus wasn't just feeding, it was protection. Grizzly mothers keep their cubs close and react quickly to anything that approaches too directly. They may bluff charge at longer distances, but when space closes and the threat continues forward, the response becomes immediate and physical. Once the mother commits, the movement is direct and forceful. It's fast, low, and controlled, covering ground in seconds over uneven terrain. The goal isn't to hunt, it's to stop the threat. The first contact typically comes as a full-body impact, using weight and momentum to knock the target down. From there, the attack shifts into force, swipes with the forelimbs to disable, followed by bites aimed at the head, neck, or upper body. The pressure is applied until movement stops. About 80 yards ahead, movement caught the attention of several hikers. A small bear cub stepped out from the brush along the slope below. Those who recognized the situation reacted right away, backing up, while urging others to do the same. Voices grew more direct as they pointed out the obvious. If there was a cub, the mother was close. Denise didn't follow. Instead of stepping back with the group, she moved off the trail, angling downhill for a better view. When someone called out again, telling her to move away, she responded over her shoulder without stopping. She raised her phone, adjusting her position as the cub shifted in and out of the brush. Behind her, the distance between the hikers and the slope widened. She kept moving forward, step by step, closing the distance without fully realizing it. By the time she stopped, she was well inside the space the bear would defend. The cub looked small from where she stood, and nothing about it matched the urgency in the voices behind her. The cub noticed her and made small distress sounds, and that was enough. The mother bear, partially hidden behind brush and rocks higher on the slope, lifted her head and fixed on Denise. Her posture changed immediately, head low, body forward. Other hikers saw it and started shouting for Denise to move back, but she hesitated. In the same time, the bear charged. It moved fast across uneven ground, covering the remaining distance in seconds. Denise only reacted when the shouting turned urgent, but by then, the gap had already collapsed. The bear slammed into her, knocking her backward onto the rocky ground. The impact alone forced the air out of her lungs. The bear followed immediately with powerful swipes to her upper body. Its claws caused deep, tearing injuries, while the force broke ribs and destabilized her chest. Denise tried to raise her arms, but it made no difference. The bear then bit down across her head and shoulder, its jaws applying crushing pressure. The bite caused severe trauma to the skull and neck, while tearing the scalp and damaging underlying structures. The attack lasted about 20 to 30 seconds in short, forceful bursts. Once Denise stopped moving, the bear released and stepped back, watching briefly before turning uphill toward its cub. The hikers stayed back to avoid another charge. After several minutes, they moved in and called for help using a satellite device. Rescue teams arrived later by air, but Denise was declared dead at the scene. Her injuries matched a defensive grizzly attack, including severe trauma to the chest, ribs, skull, and neck, along with heavy blood loss. The investigation confirmed a defensive encounter. Denise had moved too close to a cub despite repeated warnings, triggering the bear's response at close range. The trail was temporarily closed during the review and later reopened with stronger safety warnings, posted alerts, and increased ranger monitoring of bear activity. Denise stepped closer for a better shot and never saw what was already charging, and miles away in a quiet enclosure, another woman would lean in even further, this time putting her arm within reach of a 400-pound tiger. It was March 15th, 2017. The East Texas air pressed down, thick with humidity, carrying the smell of damp hay, stagnant water, and animal waste. Enclosures sat under a dull gray sky. Metal fencing warmed to the touch, while the surrounding trees stood still. The entire ranch heavy, quiet, and unmoving. Linda Carver, 46, worked part-time in retail and was deeply involved in her son's school activities, often volunteering for events and trips. She signed up for the field trip so she could stay close to her 12-year-old son and make sure he got the best experience. Before arriving, she had read online complaints about how far visitors were kept from the animals, and she decided she wasn't going to let that limit her day. From the moment they arrived, she started pointing it out, how far everything was, why the kids were being held back, why no one could see anything properly. When staff explained the rules, she talked over them, stepping forward as others stayed back. What was meant to be a simple safety boundary quickly turned into something she was determined to push. The tiger enclosure used an older design, a chain-link fence as the primary barrier, with a wooden rail set several feet back to keep visitors at a safer distance. That gap mattered. Bengal tiger individuals can exceed 400 pounds and generate enough force in a single forelimb strike to pull objects, or limbs, hard against a barrier. They are highly responsive to movement at close range, and repetitive pacing often signals focused attention on activity beyond the enclosure. As the group stopped, a handler instructed everyone to remain behind the rail and avoid the fence. Most visitors stayed back, maintaining distance. Linda didn't. While the handler was still speaking, she stepped forward, guiding her son closer before cutting him off mid-warning, insisting they couldn't see properly from behind the barrier. Ignoring repeated instructions, she moved past the rail, leaving her son behind, and approached the fence. She leaned in, positioning herself within arm's reach, attempting to draw the tiger's attention. Inside the enclosure, the tiger's pacing slowed, then stopped entirely. Its head turned, aligning directly with her position. The shift was immediate and focused, its body squared toward the fence, muscles tightening beneath the coat as it tracked her hand movements. The handler raised his voice again, issuing a direct command for her to step back. Other visitors began shouting, but she remained in place. Instead of retreating, Linda extended her forearm through one of the fence openings and began moving her hand in short, deliberate motions. That movement closed the distance. The tiger reacted instantly. It surged forward in a short burst and struck through the fence, its forelimb threading between the links. The claws made contact across her forearm, hooking and pulling. The force yanked her arm hard against the chain link, pinning it in place and dragging her upper body forward into the barrier. The metal flexed under the impact as she tried to pull back, but the angle trapped her limb. Before she could free herself, the tiger lunged again, this time with its jaws. It clamped down on her forearm through the fence, compressing it against the metal links. The bite force crushed bone and tore through muscle and connective tissue. The pressure drove her arm deeper into the fencing, worsening the structural damage as the animal adjusted its grip. She screamed and tried to pull away, grabbing the fence with her other hand for leverage, but that only fixed her position. The tiger maintained its hold for several seconds, applying sustained pressure, consistent with a close-range bite through a barrier where a full reposition wasn't possible. When it was finally released, the damage was already severe. Linda collapsed immediately, falling backward away from the fence. Her forearm had sustained catastrophic trauma, deep lacerations, crushing fractures, and extensive tearing of soft tissue, including major blood vessels. Blood loss was rapid and difficult to control, with the likely involvement of the brachial artery causing heavy arterial bleeding. People rushed forward as the handler secured the area and called for help. Pressure was applied, but the injury was too severe to control. Within minutes, Linda's condition declined as blood loss and shock progressed. Emergency services were delayed by the location. She lost consciousness and succumbed to blood loss before advanced care could be provided. The cause of death was a massive hemorrhage from traumatic injury to the brachial artery and surrounding tissue. The investigation found the tiger acted within normal behavior, responding to movement within reach of the enclosure. After the incident, the facility increased visitor distance, reinforced barriers, and tightened safety enforcement. A single reach was all it took, but along a slow riverbank, another approach wouldn't stop at a fence. This time, the ground itself was the warning, and she walked straight past it. It was June 12th, 2014. The Zambezi River moved slow and heavy under late afternoon heat, its surface broken by drifting vegetation and sudden ripples. Muddy banks showed fresh tracks and deep impressions, while sections of water opened and closed without warning, hinting at large bodies shifting just beneath. Karen Doyle, 54, had worked in logistics for over 10 years. She was known for being demanding and persistent, often pushing people to get results no matter what. She didn't like delays, and she didn't take no easily. This safari was her first big international trip, planned months in advance. She expected close encounters and great photos. By the fourth day, she was already frustrated. The animals always seemed too far away. She complained that the guides weren't doing enough to get them closer. Other tourists noticed her attitude shifting. The group stopped at a wide riverbank where several hippos were resting in the water. Most of their bodies were hidden, with only their eyes and nostrils showing. Hippos are extremely large and very territorial, especially near the water. They use the same paths to move in and out, paths worn into the mud over time. Standing in those paths is one of the most dangerous things you can do. Before anyone got close, the guide gave clear instructions. Wooden markers were set about 30 feet from the water, forming a boundary no one was supposed to cross. He explained that this area was an active hippo path and warned everyone to stay back, stay quiet, and never stand near the edge. However, Karen didn't like it. From behind the markers, the hippos were hard to see clearly. The water was murky, and the distance made photos less impressive. When one of the larger hippos lifted higher out of the water, she saw her chance and stepped past the boundary. The guide reacted right away, raising his voice and telling her to step back. A few other tourists joined in, warning her she was too close. Karen ignored them. She kept moving forward, raising her camera and adjusting her position. Witnesses said she argued loudly, saying she paid for this experience and wasn't going to settle for distant shots. That noise and movement caught the hippo's attention. One of them turned directly toward her. Its ears tilted forward, and its head rose slightly above the water as it focused on her. The guide's voice changed, now urgent, as he shouted that she was standing directly in its path. Karen stepped even closer. She stopped about 10 feet from the water, standing on dark, flattened mud. It was a clear entry point, a path the hippos used regularly, and that's when the hippo reacted. It lifted its head higher and opened its mouth wide, showing large curved tusks. It was a quick warning, not a long display. Karen stayed focused on her camera. The charge came immediately. The hippo exploded out of the water in a straight line. It moved fast, covering the distance in seconds, its weight throwing water and mud as it surged forward. Karen turned at the sound, but there was no time to move. The impact knocked her off her feet. She hit the wet ground hard, losing all balance. At the same moment, the hippo drove forward and clamped its jaws across her lower body. The bite was wide and powerful, centered across her hips and upper legs. The bone broke under the pressure, and the force crushed internal organs at the same time. It then pushed forward, using its weight to pin her to the ground. The pressure alone caused massive damage. Her body was forced sideways in the mud, adding more strain to her ribs and spine. After several seconds, the hippo released. It stayed on the bank, standing between her and the water. Its head remained angled toward the group. No one moved. The guide held his arm out, stopping anyone from getting closer. Everyone understood that moving too soon could trigger another charge. The only sounds were the shifting mud under the animal's weight and the water behind it. After a short moment, the hippo turned and moved back into the river. Only then did the guide move forward carefully. Emergency services were called, but the location was remote. It took time for help to arrive. By the time they reached her, there was nothing that could be done. Karen was pronounced dead at the scene. The cause of death was severe crushing injuries to the pelvis and torso, along with massive internal bleeding caused by the bite and force of the attack. She stood exactly where she shouldn't have been, and out on open water, it wouldn't be about where you stand, but what notices when you suddenly hit the surface. It was July 28, 2018. Afternoon fog thinned over the cold, choppy waters off Point Reyes. Swells rolled steadily beneath gray light, and visibility shifted with each passing minute. The surface looked calm from a distance, but movement underneath remained hidden, distorted by depth and glare. Elaine Foster, 52, worked in an office managing schedules and meetings for many years. She was known for being organized and calm, sticking to routines and avoiding risk. Her daily life was predictable, and she rarely stepped outside her comfort zone. This boat trip was a birthday surprise from friends, her first time out in open ocean water. She agreed mostly to go along with it. She wasn't fully comfortable on boats, but she trusted the group. Her plan was simple: stay on board, watch, and get through the afternoon. The boat moved slowly through an area known for fish and marine life. The water looked calm from the surface, but below it was active and unpredictable. In these waters, large sharks, especially great whites, regularly pass through, drawn by seals and sea lions that move along the same routes. They don't hunt boats, but they do respond to sudden movement or splashing, especially when something enters the water without warning. Before departure, the captain gave clear instructions. Stay away from the edges, don't lean over. If anything falls in, do not reach for it. At first, Elaine stayed near the center with the others, holding onto the rail and watching from a safe distance. But as the trip went on, She drifted toward the back of the boat. The rear deck sat lower than the rest, only a few feet above the water, and gave a closer view of the surface. She leaned forward against the rail, watching the water move beneath her. Small ripples passed along the surface, reflecting light in shifting patterns. A few of her friends told her to step back, pointing out how close she was getting. The captain repeated the warning from the front. She didn't move. Instead, she shifted her weight forward, trying to get a better angle. A few minutes later, a gust of wind caught her hat and pulled it off her head. It landed in the water just behind the boat and began drifting away slowly. She reacted without thinking. Elaine leaned farther over the rail, reaching down toward the water as the hat floated just out of reach. The boat rocked slightly with the swell beneath it. Her footing shifted on the damp surface. Her center of balance moved too far forward. Then she slipped. Her body tipped over the rail, and she dropped into the water. The fall was short, but the impact was hard enough to knock the air out of her chest. The cold hit immediately. The sudden temperature change triggered an automatic gasp as she surfaced, pulling in water and air at the same time. She came up struggling, her body vertical instead of flat. Her legs kicked unevenly, and her arms pushed down in short, uncoordinated motions. Panic took over almost instantly. Her breathing became fast and uncontrolled, and she wasn't able to steady herself. On the boat, the crew moved quickly. One of them grabbed a flotation ring and threw it toward her. Another started turning the boat around. Voices overlapped, calling out instructions she couldn't process. Below the surface, the sudden splash and erratic movement sent strong signals through the water. Each kick and arm movement created pressure waves that spread outward. A great white shark moving at depth detected the disturbance and changed direction, rising toward the surface. The water around Elaine churned as she struggled to stay above it. Her movements were uneven and loud in the water, exactly the kind of signal that draws attention. The strike came fast. The shark surged upward from below in a direct line, its body moving with speed and force. It hit her from underneath and slightly to the side, jaws opening at the last second. The bite landed across her lower torso and upper leg. The force lifted part of her body out of the water before pulling her under for a brief moment. The pressure of the bite caused immediate damage. The tissue tore under the force, and the impact disrupted major blood vessels. The water around her darkened quickly as blood spread outward. Within seconds, the shark released. This kind of bite was not sustained. It was a single high-force strike, followed by withdrawal. The shark dropped back into deeper water and did not return. Elaine resurfaced briefly, but her movements were already weakening. The crew threw another flotation device and moved the boat into position, but the damage was too severe. She lost strength quickly as blood loss increased. Within minutes, she lost consciousness before she could be brought fully to safety. The crew pulled her alongside the boat, but she could not be revived. The cause of death was massive trauma and rapid blood loss from the initial bite. The investigation found the attack was triggered by her sudden fall and erratic movement, with the shark delivering a single investigative strike under low visibility conditions. The moment she went overboard, it was already too late, and back on land, another woman would step closer anyway, until the still water in front of her finally moved. It was October 15, 2015. Humid Florida air pressed down over soaked fairways, the marsh edges dark with still water and soft mud. Reeds bent slightly along the bank, and faint slide marks cut through the shoreline where something had moved recently, just beneath the surface. Sharon Whitaker, 49, worked in sales and was known for being persistent and detail-focused, tracking everything and refusing to accept losses, a mindset she carried into golf, where she kept strict scores and grew visibly frustrated when things didn't go her way. Visiting her sister for a short break, she chose a challenging course with the goal of hitting a personal best, but by the back nine, after losing several balls to water and sand, her slipping score only made her more determined not to lose another one. On one hole, a long water hazard ran along the side of the fairway. The dark water looked calm, but warning signs were posted all along the edge. Alligators present. Stay back. And players had already been told that anything near the water should be left alone. When Sharon's shot landed about 15 feet from the edge, her playing partner told her to drop a new ball and take the penalty, but she refused. She stared at the ball for a moment, then stepped off the cart path despite him repeating the warning. The ground was soft from recent rain, and her shoes sank slightly as she moved down the slope. She spotted the ball in the grass and focused on it, adjusting her position as if it were just another routine play. Her partner raised his voice, telling her to come back, but she didn't turn around. Instead, she kept moving closer, lining herself up with the ball and taking her time, brushing off his warnings without even looking back. Just beyond the ball, in the shallow water, a 9-foot American alligator lay almost invisible, with only its eyes and the top of its head above the surface. Her partner saw it clearly and shouted again, louder this time, telling her to back up immediately, but she didn't move. She tried to pull the ball closer using her club, reaching out and dragging at it without stepping any further. When that didn't work, she moved closer anyway, stopping about 5 feet from the water's edge. Still focused on the ball, she tapped the surface with her club, sending vibrations through the water, and that was all it took. The alligator reacted instantly, launching upward in a short, explosive burst and clamping onto the nearest part of her body, her upper leg. The force knocked her off balance and drove her to the ground. Its jaws locked down with crushing pressure, breaking bone and tearing through muscle. The bite damaged major blood vessels in her thigh, including the femoral artery, triggering rapid and severe bleeding. The alligator maintained its grip as it pulled backward toward the water, dragging her across the soft ground. She tried to hold onto the bank, clawing at the mud and grass as her partner rushed toward her. As the animal pulled, it twisted its body in a short, forceful motion, attempting to reposition and gain leverage. The shallow water and uneven terrain limited its ability to perform a full death roll, but the movement increased the tearing force at the point of contact. After several seconds of sustained struggling and resistance, the alligator released its grip, likely due to the awkward angle and lack of depth needed to continue the maneuver, and retreated back into deeper water. Sharon was left at the edge, badly injured and bleeding heavily. Her partner pulled her farther up the bank and called for help while applying pressure to the wound, but the bleeding was severe and difficult to control due to the extent of the vascular damage. She lost consciousness within minutes, as blood loss and shock progressed. Emergency responders arrived shortly after, but her condition had already deteriorated beyond recovery. She was pronounced dead not long after. The cause of death was determined to be massive blood loss resulting from traumatic injury to the femoral artery, along with severe fractures and extensive soft tissue damage to the leg. The investigation found the alligator's behavior consistent with a defensive or opportunistic feeding response to close-range disturbance. There was no indication of abnormal aggression. Following the incident, the area reinforced safety warnings and increased patrol monitoring around water hazards, emphasizing that anything near the water should be left undisturbed.